We'll just
Three,
rip it.
2, 1.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the very first episode of the Dorks. Nope, that's not what it's called. The Internet Writing Buddies podcast. Almost called it Dorks in the Road, which,
It is dorks in the road,
well,
let's
there's two
be
of us.
honest.
Yeah, I am your host, along with the wonderful Grace. I am Ben, aka the Dork in the Road. Some of you may have heard of me. I have a YouTube channel where I mostly talk about dual sport adventure riding and motorcycle camping shenanigans. Grace, who are you?
My name is Grace. I am the graceful renegade on all of these social medias, and I am an Emmy award-winning videographer who tries to ride motorcycles from time to time. So, yeah,
Wow, I didn't know we were throwing out like our biggest lifetime achievement. Well, then I'm verified on YouTube and have 100,000 subscribers.
there we
Emmy
go. There
Award.
it
She just
is.
hits me right over the head with Emmy Award win. What am I supposed to do
Someone's
with that?
got to keep you on your toes, Ben.
I guess. Good.
All
Oh.
right. So Ben just returned from a lovely trip to the coast of Oregon during November, by the way, which is quite cold on the Transalp, which is going to be our subject of the day, the 2024 Honda Transalp. So Ben, how was your trip? It was cold,
It was,
obviously.
yeah, we have like a weird cold snap going on right now. Like we keep breaking record lows. It's not usually this cold this early in the year. We don't usually get around freezing until winter, actual winter, at least here in the valley. But it was like 24 degrees yesterday, and so I went to the coast because it was warmer. It only got down to like 37 last night. But coming back today sucked. I drove past the sign that had the temperature and it said 37, and I was like, what am I doing? Like I really try not to get out and ride. I like to ride all year, once it gets below about 40 degrees Fahrenheit, I usually just try to find a different day. So I don't like to ride below 40. I don't like to camp below 30, unless I have to. But I broke my rule today because I had to get home.
I think sometimes you have to break the rule to get home, but I'm with you. Below 40 starts to push the limits just a touch. But yeah, I guess since the topic of the day is the Transalp, let's talk about how the Transalp did getting out to the coast, even though it's a little colder. How did the bike feel? How are you enjoying the bike? Give me your full detailed perspective.
Well, it was a good test because I just spent all that time. I finally got all the mods for it. Everything
Yeah,
but the center stand. I don't have it yet. Oh, and I'm getting a tail tidy that hasn't arrived yet. But I did crash
nice.
bars, upper and lower, skid plate, new tires. I put the Dunlop Trail Max Raids. That's what they are. Yeah, on it. Hippo hands, hand guards, heated grips. And thank God for those hippo hands and those heated grips coming home. My hands, it was so interesting because I decided to take some dirt home because I really wanted to try out the new tires. And so I ride with two fingers on the clutch, right? These two fingers were freezing. Like even in the hippo hands, it was cold, but because they weren't on the heated grip, like there was a definite
Yeah.
difference. I was honestly pretty surprised at how much colder they were. But that's just how cold it was outside because usually the heated grips heat up the inside of the hippo hands. It's not like a nice cozy oven cocoon. But this was the first time taking it out fully loaded because I had my giant loop panniers on it. I guess I did it before I had the pannier racks on. I did it with a Great Basin bag, but this was the first time with the actual pannier setup. And first time on dirt with a full pannier setup, and it did well. I actually found some ice today.
Oh God.
Kind of going a little too fast, hauling ass up through the woods, and then I come around a corner and there's all this frost, and then I look down at the road and I'm like, that is not wet. So I got to test them on some ice too, but bike did great. That thing is so fun to ride. I mean,
Yeah.
honestly, I don't even really notice the extra weight on the bike. I didn't have a ton of gear, like I probably had 30 pounds at most. But
Yeah.
I mean, it's just a great all-around bike, which is really what it was designed to be. And I think a lot of us didn't understand that, and it's why a lot of us have a lot of misconceptions about it. I mean, I wanted it to be the Transalp, or I wanted it to be the Tenere replacement. I wanted it to be the same thing, and it really isn't. And as I'm working on my review and trying to research the bike, I've even started pulling up like the design documents and the philosophy behind them, and I really had it wrong when I made that video about literally the thumbnail says this is not what we wanted.
Right.
Because
Well, and that's what's caused a little bit of the backlash in some of the comment sections, I know, is just because I think a lot of us really expected that this was going to be Honda's kind of answer to the Tenere for Yamaha. And instead, it's been kind of its own animal. I was actually mentioning this because I have not taken my Transalp off-road yet, but I have done a lot of road riding with my buddies here who are all on Harleys and whatever else. And after being on my CB for the last couple of years and trying to keep up with them, that extra little 750cc versus the 500, I can keep up with all my buddies now without batting an eyelash. And it's amazing how that little bit of extra power just like totally kicks into gear, and it's awesome.
It's fast.
It is. It's fast and it's
fast.
easy to handle. The turning radius is great. Historical context wasn't bike was only in the US market for like 2 years, wasn't it? Like in the late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been 30 years since, or almost 3 decades since this bike has been on the market in the US. And yeah, I mean, it's interesting to kind of see the reactions because we had some negative reactions to you loving this bike so much. And it's been kind of hilarious to watch as an audience member of how outraged people are by your enjoyment of this bike. And yeah, do you want to touch on that, Ben?
Well, people don't like to have their expectations subverted. And you know what? I don't either.
Yeah. That's true.
And part of the reason for buying it was like to find out if I was wrong. Like it's the same reason I bought that Norden, because I have always talked all this crap about KTMs. And I was like, I probably should own one, and just see. And I don't know. I knew it was going to be a fun street bike, but I didn't expect to like it as much as I do. The response has been interesting, and I think we've seen it on Ian's channel too, on Big Rock Moto's channel, and he and I talk behind the scenes a lot, and just the kind of commiserating on some of the things that we're seeing. But I think a lot of people had the same idea that I did. They looked at the underslung exhaust and that really weird sump design, which is like the most vulnerable thing I've ever seen, and them shipping it without a skid plate and decided, well, this is not what it's supposed to be. But none of us ever listened to what Honda was saying it was supposed to be.
No.
With a little research, which is again, I'm trying to understand the context. Like I went out and put together a chart of ground clearances, right? Like, because everyone's like, well, that's not a real off-road bike. The ground clearance is awful. And it has more ground clearance than a 1250 GS, and nobody says that those can't go off-road. It's got more ground clearance than a KLR.
In fact, I think the GS community would start screaming right now about how it can go off-road and fight back. Yeah, I mean, Ian, Big Rock Moto, Ian. Hi, Ian, if you're listening. I mean, that was the conversation he and I had when we were at the ADV rally in Julian in November, which was he brought his Transalp and he was having such a good time riding that bike around and kept talking about how underrated of a bike it was and how people were really going to enjoy it if they gave it a chance. And yeah, he kind of got the same backlash that you did to a certain degree. I mean, there was also that, after you put up the double bike buy day video, like we dealt with that weird, oh, did you guys all get paid to have Transalps? And it just so happened that the three of us got them the same week. But I don't know.
That's why. It's not like there's no conspiracy. It's like if we all got the same video game on the same day.
Yes.
That's the day it came out.
Yeah. And I think it's just a testament to sometimes how crazy people's comments are on social media these days, particularly with YouTube. It gets fascinating. All I can say is I'm glad I have a small following. Also, congrats again on 100K, Ben. Small round of applause. Nice work.
Thank you.
100,000 on YouTube is no small feat. We're all very proud of you, and you've been working your tail off for that. So congratulations, my friend.
That was a big deal. Thank you. That was a big goal this year. I'm glad we made it.
The white check. So epic.
I have all of you listeners to thank. And if you're not subscribed, well, 200,000 is right around the corner. So
hell yeah.
Thanks. We'll see.
Yeah.
So you probably have more street riding experience on the bike than I do.
This is probably true.
I hit 800 miles like literally exactly when I pulled into my driveway today. So nice. I'm excited to get to 1,000 because I'll do a 1,000-mile review, but I don't like to review a bike before then. But so talk to me a little bit about your street experience and how it compares to maybe other adventure bikes you've ridden.
So yeah, I think one of the things that I love about this bike is how comfortable it is. I have ridden this bike all over Bend, as well as out kind of in the surrounding Central Oregon areas. I have just under 500 miles on it right now. So I haven't been gutting it out, but it's also because I bought this bike in November and I've been spending the majority of my time dirt riding on my dirt bike. But this bike handles really well on the twisties and on tight corners. Highway riding is actually so much more, it's so much easier on my CB because it's not aerodynamic and I didn't really have a lot of power. Being able to deal with tractor trailers, especially in high wind environments, is a giant pain in the ass. And it's also mildly terrifying. And I had way less of that with this bike. I've also ridden it in some like rain and sleet. It handled that really well. I really do enjoy the different modes of the bike. I had so much fun. I hadn't really hopped into sport mode until about 2 weeks ago, and I threw the bike into sport mode and I just ripped through basically back out to Sisters and had so much fun kind of riding faster than I should have been. But it's just incredible to me. The traction is amazing. Just being able to throw your weight around is very easy. It's kind of like a bike that I feel is built for me, as much as I hate to put it that way. And I had a feeling after riding the CB for as long as I did that was going to be the case, which is why I bought the bike in the first place. But in general, I think it's a fantastic touring bike. I think it's also a great commuter bike. It will hold the weight of the luggage pretty well. Like you mentioned earlier, you had 30 pounds on the bike. I think that's a great amount of weight. It could probably handle more than that. I know I will be putting more weight on there than that, but that's me. And in general, though, I think it's so ideal. I obviously haven't been doing too much wear and tear because I am terrified of not having a skid plate on this bike, especially this time of year in Oregon, because they're already putting cinder down. And the thought of damaging the underbelly of that bike terrifies me, but it's still awesome. So yeah, that's what I got. That's my experience with it so far. I haven't done any wheelies, but considering one of my buddies just broke his leg doing a wheelie, I think I'll be opting out of that for the time being. So yeah.
I almost did one today, but I was testing my new tires on it's sort of a wet hard pack, so like a little bit of mud on the surface, but not like deep mud. And
Yeah.
I turned the traction control off and gave it a big handful, and the front came up. So I was like, oh well, the rear tire's obviously hooking up pretty well if it's
Yeah.
not spinning. But what you said about the 500X interests me, and I probably
Yeah.
most people listening or watching this, or maybe not. I don't know. I don't. We have a lot of newish riders. We also have a lot of kind of experienced riders. You have a lot more experience on the 500X than I do, uh,
Yeah.
but I had one and I rode it. And what strikes me when when I ride the Transalp on the street in particular, what I think about is this sort of easy to ride, jump on and go-ness of the 500X. My favorite thing about like when it was just like, oh, I got to run to the store. First bike I jumped on every time was that 500X because it's just easy to throw your leg over and ride. It's not super tall where you got to worry about where you're going to put your feet down. It's not overly powerful where, you got to kind of ride at 70%. None of that. It's not super loud. There's no concerns whatsoever. And when I sit on this bike, it feels like that to me. Like it
Yeah.
is every time I throw my leg over, I'm again surprised at how easy it is to get my feet down because I'm just used to my Tenere and there is a marked difference. And like seat height is not the end all be all. And I've been preaching that for a long time. Like don't decide you can't get a bike based on its seat height, but because it's manageable, but you have to think about it. And like I never have to worry about where I stop and put the kickstand down on the Transalp. I never have to worry if I can get it leaned over far enough to get the kickstand up. That is a thing I have to deal with on taller bikes because I only have a 30-inch inseam. But in terms of that and just the ease of riding, it's just the bike loves you and wants you to ride and have a good time. It's exactly what it was designed to be. So what is your kind of take on the comparison between the 500X and the 750?
I mean, I agree with you 110%. I think it's a Honda thing, to be honest, just that ability to just hop on the bike and it's immediately easy. Now, granted, I am genetically spoiled because I have a 36-inch inseam.
Makes no
So
sense.
I can hop on taller
You could
bikes
walk
and
over my head.
yeah, it's true. But it's not, that's not something I struggle with, but I do think one of the things to note that is a similarity between the Transalp and the CB500X is just the fact that it is an easy to ride bike. It is so easy to just hop on and go. That was always what I loved about my CB is I just always felt comfortable being on it, whether I was doing a road ride with friends, whether I was hopping on a forest road out to sisters, anything like that. It was just an easy bike to maneuver. The difference that I feel with the Transalp is maneuverability. It maneuvers a little bit better. It's a little bit easier for me to handle, actually, which is
Turning
kind of,
radius is tighter.
yeah, yeah. And I also love having that extra kick of power, particularly because with where I live in Central Oregon, I usually have to do some element of road or highway riding to get to the off-road sections I want to get to. And it is a lot easier for me to jet around with a 750 versus a 500. And usually, those are a little bit under. So we're looking at like a 490 something cc engine. But anyway, at the end of the day, I think they're very similar. I just think that the Transalp is going to give you a little bit more power, more maneuverability. And I also just think the aerodynamics of it make it a lot better of a touring bike overall. The bike is set up for long distance riding and in a way that the CB is not. And I may do with that for 18 months, but after 25,000 miles, I was very ready to find something that was going to handle on roads a little bit better. And that is definitely something that the Transalp brings to the table.
But it has, I just looked it up. It's almost twice as much horsepower. In Europe it is. Here we got like the 84 horsepower version.
Yeah.
But it doesn't feel like it's fast when you want it to be, but it's not like the
Yes.
Norden where I was like I wouldn't put a new rider on it without giving them like making sure it was in
No.
range.
And that's the thing that I do like about it is it's fast when you want to be. It doesn't have to be, and that's also one of the things that I think comes into play sometimes with the riding modes. And I really appreciate that a lot more bikes, newer bikes, are starting to do that with the gravel mode, sport mode, standard mode, rain mode, etc. Obviously, like with the gravel mode, the ABS comes off. That's a big difference between the CB and the Transalp is the ABS. You can't manually turn the ABS off with the CB500X. You have to do that aftermarket, and it's a whole pain in the derriere trying to do that yourself, let me tell you. So I was always very conscientious of that. But when you have the Transalp in gravel mode, it automatically turns off, which is amazing.
Doesn't
But
turn all the way off.
it doesn't? You
No,
would know better than me.
it
So
shuts the front off, but not, or it shuts. Yes.
just the front?
Actually, no. So there's okay. There's two modes. There's on-road and off-road ABS.
Yeah.
They both suck. So you have to go in and manually shut the ABS all the way off. Uh, which sucks because I
But
often
you can shut the ABS
you
off
can,
manually.
but
Yes. Yeah.
you can't configure. What sucks is like you can't like just set that to your user mode and have it. You have to go in and manually shut it off every time, which is a safety thing, and it's not their fault because it's like required by law or whatever. It's just annoying. Okay, I had a point there. Okay, so we've talked about street, we've talked about um, how easy it is to ride, but I think the thing people are missing is it's also pretty capable for a lot
Yeah.
of reasons. And the easy to ride, I think, factors in, right? Because being able to get my feet down and having a low center of gravity makes me more confident off road.
Yeah.
I don't mind losing an inch of ground clearance to gain that confidence necessarily. Now that I have a skid plate, I'm going to bang it on some rocks. Like I know that's going to happen. I wanted to go take it up on Oregon BDR Section 4 out by Cache Mountain. Like that was going to be my ultimate test because it's got those big chunky rock gardens that you can't ride around. You have to go through, but
Right.
also a bunch of sand, but it's freaking snowing up there now. So now I'm not sure where to take it. But my point is, I think this bike is going to do 80% of what the Tenere could do. Hell, it'll do everything. It's just going to do it not as fast. And it's pretty, it's more capable than people are giving it credit for. Um, I think it's got Showa suspension. People are forgetting about that.
Yeah.
And I think what the person that Honda built this bike for, they built it for everybody. They built it for the masses in the middle. I said this in my comparison video. They're not trying to chase the top 10% of riders. They're not trying to chase the top 20% of riders. They're trying to get the 60% of us in the middle because their job is, or Honda is not setting out to create the fastest, most capable motorcycle of all time. They want to make the best selling motorcycle of all time. And
Yeah.
so they create a bike that makes the most sense for the widest range of people. And I think that's what this is.
Yeah. And I think that that gets kind of lost in the interim with this bike sometimes is everybody's so angry about the fact that it's not a competitor of Tenere that they're not realizing that like this bike is meant for the middle ground of ADV riders, which includes a rider like me who does mainly just like intermediate terrain at maximum, because a lot of the time, like if I'm going to do harder, more technical things, I'm not going to want to do it on a bigger bike. Also, half the time I'm touring as well. And this is meant to be a touring bike with ADV capabilities. I know I say that all the time about this bike, and I think it is the absolute best way to describe it. Is it is not meant to be, you know, a pro rider on a ridge line, you know, hopping from rock ledge to rock ledge like you can on a Tenere when you do all of the aftermarket with that. This is meant to be a touring bike that can hop off road, do some fun shit, have a good time. But then once you're done, like you can hop back on the highway and ride 300 miles to the next city. You know, that's the kind of bike it's meant to be. And it gets lost on people when, you know, they just get that idea that like every bike kind of needs to be similar. And Honda didn't do that. Honda is making this for kind of like how you appeal to kind of the everyday rider, Ben. Like this is kind of like the everyday rider bike. Like this is for somebody that isn't always going to be doing the most advanced stuff, but wants to have a bike that is more than capable of doing harder things on different days, but for the majority of their rides is not going to be fucking destroying skid plates, you know? So, yeah.
Are you saying it's the dork in the road of motorcycles?
Kind of, yeah. I
Not heavy
mean,
enough. But
no, not.
otherwise, yeah.
I mean, honestly, like the thing that I keep feeling about this bike, every time I get on it, I just keep saying to myself, I feel like this bike was built for me because with how it moves, with the size of the bike, with the power of the bike, it's everything I wanted the CB to be that it wasn't. And so it's one of those great bikes that anybody can hop on, whether you're a beginner or advanced, and you can ride it well. And that's, I think, what Honda was trying to appeal to.
I can prove it. I have receipts. Here, let me read it to you directly from their design document. The new XL 750 Transalp is designed for all-round magnificent scale, long touring performance in comfort, from city to motorway, from mountain passes to unpaved roads. Does not say destroying single track and bunny hopping from ridgeline to ridgeline. There's a reason why they don't have Poltaras jumping canyons on this thing. Because it is designed for the mat, like you just said. Anyone can ride it well. You meet the nicest people on a Honda. But I think what people are discounting is that just because of that doesn't mean that it's not a capable bike. I think Ian is a great example of it because Ian is a better rider than I am. He's a far more experienced rider than I am, and he's having a blast on this thing. And then I'm out there riding it and having a great time at like intermediate, maybe slightly above. And then you're coming up to intermediate and you're enjoying the shit out of it too. Like that's
Yeah.
a big spectrum of people that can
Yeah.
really enjoy this motorcycle.
Absolutely. And I think that that's kind of the perfect three examples you could have are the three of us as riders. Because I'm more of that beginner to intermediate ADV rider. You're intermediate to advanced, and Ian fits that advanced category. And we all love this bike. Like we're all obsessed with it. And that is a perfect demonstration of how it's for everyone, not just a certain type of rider. Now, don't get me wrong. I do love the Tenere. It's a fun bike. And I have ridden it off road. I've ridden it on road. It's wonderful. I understand why people swear by them. But I think for the price point, this bike is pretty unbelievable. I mean, the Honda, in my opinion, absolutely crushed it with the Transalp. So it's just my take.
If you saw Ian's, which video was that? One of the last ones he did about the ownership long it was like an hour long video because Ian doesn't do anything halfway, but he had a chart of like had the Transalp and the Tenere and the Suzuki that no certain people will not stop commenting about on my videos, and he had them rated like on a scale of 1 to 5, and he didn't point this out, but if you added the numbers up, now the Transalp was higher rated on the road, and I hands down, I would much rather tour on the Transalp. The Tenere is fine on the road. That's what it's supposed to be, fine, but it's not fun and easy to ride on the road like this bike is. So that ranks higher. And obviously the Tenere is a better off-road bike. It is, that's not a
Yeah,
question.
hands down. Yeah.
But the Transalp is more betterer on the road then the Tenere is off the road. And so overall, if you were to add up all the points, if you look at his video, Transalp actually has more points.
Yeah.
And I
It's a
think about a
more,
trip. Sorry,
yeah,
go ahead.
no, it's a more versatile bike. I mean, that's just the bottom line is the Tenere is built and has a purpose. It's basically an ADV dirt bike. It's awesome. It's meant
100%.
for that.
Hmm.
But the Transalp is meant for a larger spectrum of riding, which I think can be appreciated if you do a larger spectrum of riding. Now, if you're only doing ADV, if you're only doing that type of stuff, sure, I could understand why you would want to go with the Tenere. But if you're doing a mix of everything, you want a bike that can do everything well versus just one thing amazingly.
Right. Right. If you're doing all around magnificent scale, long touring performance and comfort, oh, that's from Honda's thing. I think about a trip like a trip up to Critters Camp out in, Broken Leg aside. Uh,
Ugh,
if I was thinking about going on that trip tomorrow, I
yeah.
know what bike I would take. And I've
Yep.
already ridden the Tenere all the way up and back, but I would 100% take this Transalp because it is so much more comfortable on the road and more fun. And if it had cruise control, you'd never ride the other bike again.
Yep.
Um, Now Baja, I would do the Baja trip on this bike. I would, and I know it could make it because the 500Xs do. But
Yeah.
probably down there, if you put the two in front of me, knowing how hard the hard sections are, I would rather suffer through the road riding, and be a little less comfortable, but a little more confident off road. But I would take my own Transalp down there and do that trip.
Yeah. I mean, I did the advanced terrain of Baja on the CB500X and survived. And I can vouch for that. And that bike actually was pretty capable down there for that. So the Transalp definitely could do it as well. But yeah, like you said, I think in that terrain in particular, having the Tenere is going to be way more beneficial and way more fun to ride, other than those highway sections where it's just straight up throttle in between towns and whatever else. But, that's only here and there versus what you're focusing on with a trip like that, which is strictly like a lot of single track, a lot of up and down through the mountains, a lot of sand, etc. So, yeah.
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 Did I just unprove my own point? I don't think so. Because
No.
it's more, like you said, it's a more specialized tool and it's better.
Yeah.
A
Well,
scalpel is not a hacksaw.
it also depends on the context of the trip too. Like if you're just down to grind through Baja, Tenere. But if you're doing like a tour, like with what I do professionally, if you're touring and ATV riding and carrying luggage and filming and doing all of this multitude of things, you're going to want a bike like a Transalp because it's more comfortable to be on, it's more manageable, and it's meant for all of that. If I was going to go do like a grind out only off-road riding trip, I would want a dirt bike, hands down, because that's all you're focusing on. So it just depends on the context of the situation.
Right. And here's the caveat. If I was riding down to Cabo on the highway and then riding back doing the tour, I'd rather be on my Transalp.
Oh,
But because I
100%.
flew
Yeah.
down there and just hopped on at Tenere, it's a different story. Right.
Yes.
Here's another scenario because the Northern California BDR is being released in February, probably. And I'm gonna try to ride it next summer because it's close to home.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna have to ride. I don't know where it's starting, but my guess is Sacramento-ish.
Yeah.
So that's the 9 hour freeway ride to get there. I'm taking my Transalp. Like
Yeah.
I'm not taking my
Yeah.
Tenere, and it also helps that I know the route is not that hard, or it's not
Yeah.
supposed to be super hard. And if I do the Oregon BDR again, there's a real good chance I'll be on my Transalp because it's a slog to get down there. I don't know that I'd ever start at
Right.
the beginning again, but even I've toyed with doing Christmas Valley to Hood, and I would do that on my Transalp. Just
Yeah.
sand sections might be interesting on these tires. I need to test them first.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll have to let me know how that goes. Those are the tires, the Dunlops you have are the same ones that they're sending me for the builds. So you'll have to keep me posted on how they handle in sand.
I like them.
Sand.
I like them
Yeah.
so far, but the lugs are just not very deep, and you
Yeah.
need that paddle action in sand. So I just don't think you're going to get as much of it. That's what Jeff and Ian were both saying. Like they're great tires, but they're not awesome in deep sand.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. I think it's funny to mitigate all the haters out there. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people that aren't happy about us liking this bike as much as we do, but I love it. I mean, and you've obviously done more off-road than I have with it and seem more keen to continue doing that. But
Yeah, I want
California
it.
BDR will be a good test, I think, to see
I-
how it does.
I'm annoyed I can't get to any of my good spots right now.
Yeah.
I think I am going to take it back out to shotgun and hit some of the muddy trails just to see how the tires do, especially now that I've got crash bars on it. I'll
Yeah.
hit that single track trail that we did. Like this is planned.
Yeah.
I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
Starbucks here, by the way. You can only see it on
Hi,
video, but
Starbucks.
that's Starbucks sleeping right there.
She's very adorable.
Yeah,
Yes.
he's a good one. Well, we talk about people. People don't like to have their expectations subverted, but I subverted my own, I think. And I don't know. I definitely am very willing to admit that I was wrong. I judged too quickly. And what I'm learning from this experience is stats aren't everything. And, when that's all we have and we speculate, like I made that video because I was looking at pictures and stats on paper. And what I said made sense, except the focus and the purpose of the bike. I completely misunderstood it, and a lot of people actually jumped in and corrected me and said the Transalp's never been about that. It's always been a touring bike that was kind of capable, and I just disregarded it because I assumed they were just bringing back the name, not like the spirit of the bike as well. Um,
Yeah.
Reading this design document, no, they were 100% bringing back the old thing, but I knew what I wanted because I want everything to be a Honda, but it was kind of dumb to want that because that's not what Honda does. They don't go after, they're not chasing KTM. Yamaha is sort of trying, but trying to beat them on price point with a bike that's pretty capable, close to capable. And Yamaha likes that. Kawasaki is supposed to be the performance brand, but they're more like the speed. Yamaha
Yeah.
seems to be like the capability, um, whatever. That's neither here nor there. But Honda is the Africa Twin like the fastest off-road tour? No, it's not. Nothing, even that their sport bikes are not the same. They don't sell out and put everything into speed at the expense of reliability. And, they overbuild things. They're always heavier. They're always all of
Right.
these things. And it's just the sum of the parts is greater than they look
Yeah.
on paper. I don't.
Well, I mean, there's a reason I have three Hondas in the garage. Like my dirt bike's a tractor, but it's great for me because I'm not a rider that needs a powerhouse of a dirt bike. Like my CRF 250X is a tractor and it's great. It manages everything super well. And I think that that's just how Honda is. Honda makes something that works as long as there's oil in that bike and as long as there are decent tires, it's going to run no matter what, and gas, of course, but whatever. But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of how they have made bikes. They're so reliable. And I think particularly as an off-road rider and as somebody who does travel solo as a female alone a lot, having reliability in a motorcycle is so much more important to me than performance. I need to have a bike that's going to run no matter what, because there are times when I'm in the middle of nowhere by myself for miles, or, I'm camping alone or whatever else. And like, I need to make sure that if I screw something up on the bike, it's still going to go. If I drop the bike, I need to be able to get it up and have it go. And some of these other brands don't always have that. And I also don't want to spend a fortune constantly having to fix the bike. I mean, KTMs are fun to ride. I had a KTM dirt bike. I miss it all the time. It was a beast, but the parts for it were so expensive. And after a while, it does start to add up, especially when I feel like it's less reliable than the bike I have. So I don't know. It's a mashup of so many different feelings, and everybody's got their brands they love. But I love Honda. I have never had any issues with Honda bikes I've had ever, which I don't think many people could say for every other brand of motorcycle.
Yeah, I always like to throw that out. Like, okay, think about the last time you were stranded on the side of the road with a buddy. What were they riding?
Yep.
Nobody ever says Honda.
No, no. I mean, and the joke of KTM that I say all the time is, and I love KTMs, not knocking on KTM, but known to malfunction is what I say all the time is the catchphrase with that, because I do think those bikes tend to have an interesting temperament when they're pushed a little too hard or something is not quite right. And whereas I feel like I could throw a Honda off a cliff and it would probably still run.
Well,
So it's just different.
it's a sliding scale. Like the
Yeah.
faster and more performance you get out of a bike, the less reliable it's going to be because
Yep.
of the stress on the engine. Like their higher compression and everything else. It's just,
Yep.
and Honda's like, screw that. We're going to stay over here. We want you to meet
Yeah.
the nicest people on a Honda, and
Mhm.
they're willing to let go of that versus the other side of the spectrum, that you're going to have more issues, but when it's working, like when my Norden was running, that thing was a freaking blast. And it didn't break down on me. I only had a couple minor issues. I say that because the guy that bought it from me has had a couple since. Uh,
Yeah.
but I mean, that's just a fact. Like everyone wants to argue that faster bikes are less reliable, period. Like that's
Yeah.
just a simple fact of physics. Uh,
Yeah.
Everything else notwithstanding, they
Yeah.
just are.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well,
But that's not about the Transalp. Stop
sorry.
pissing off all the KTM fanboys on our first episode.
I'm gonna get some phone calls, I'm sure, after this episode
Yeah.
comes out.
You got to get to episode 3 before you start throwing out known to malfunction.
Sorry, I know. I to all the KTM guys out there that are going to be angry about this, because I know most women won't take it personal. Um, I just want to apologize. I do love the brand. Again, I have owned a KTM. My focus right now is just more on Honda and reliability versus performance. Although I'm sure at some point I will eat my words in the future, as Ben has with the Transalp in general, right, Ben?
Hey, Crow, it's delicious, man. It's delicious.
I have to give you credit though, because at least you are humble enough and open and honest enough to say, I made a bad judgment. Not a lot of people would do that. A lot of people would stick to their guns and not want to take accountability for that.
Yeah, I guess I could have pretended like I never said it, but
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah.
definitely said it. Like, I was,
Yep.
I don't know. I was,
Well, to be fair, we all looked at that bike without a skid plate on it, and we're all a little horrified, myself
well,
included. I remember, like, I actually went back through some of my old photos of the initial release, and like I circled the area where there should be a skid plate in bright red and put it in one of my stories and said, "This is going to be a problem," because
yeah.
it is a
Well,
problem.
it's
But
dumb. It's
yeah,
dumb to ship a bike that's off-road without.
anything.
But
Yeah,
my suspicion, and I talked about this before, is like they were desperate to hit that $10,000 mark.
yeah,
Because you have to mount crash bars in order to mount a skid plate because it's the Hornet engine, that adds a lot of money. That's probably $500 right there. It's the same reason it doesn't have cruise control and all these other things that seem like easy no-brainers. That, and
yeah,
as Ian has pointed out, they also need to differentiate it from their higher end models, or else no one's going to buy an Africa Twin.
yeah.
But and I made that video jokingly about the 10A and how the design is not really that different, and it isn't. They had to have known people were going to fixate on that. I don't. It's the damn thing is basically chrome. I'm looking at a picture of it right now. Like it sticks out.
Yeah, it does. I
And
do think the one thing that Honda probably kept in mind, though, is just that with the ADV community, particularly over here, almost everybody was going to put an aftermarket skid plate
that
on
always
there.
happens. Well,
Yeah.
and people that are just going to tour on it aren't going to care. So
No.
they wanted to make it cheaper for them.
Yeah. Like the
I,
fact that this bike is under 10 grand, it's like right at the 10 grand mark.
a lot
It's
of bike for
unbelievable.
yeah.
Like it's fantastic. That's so affordable. And it definitely puts it in a different realm of making it accessible for more riders in a way that not a lot of other bikes are. Like, I obviously I've had a lot of experience riding the Pan Americas over the last year and a half, but one of the things that is so disheartening about that bike is dry off the line, it's 20 grand. And I think as if you're getting into ADV riding, I mean, you look at that and you go, that's like 2 cars. Like that's just,
Yeah,
it's such an investment into a bike that is newer to the industry too. So I don't know. I think if you're looking at that, it's like I could have 2 to 3 motorcycles for the cost of one. And how do you kind of balance that?
how many trips do you want to go on that you could afford to pay for with the
Yeah.
difference, and it
Yeah.
it really is. I throw this one out a lot, but like the ultimate discovery machine. It's a bike that almost anyone could jump on and go from their very first gravel road ride, very first moto camping trip, all the way to I'm going to ride around the world, or I'm going to ride across the country, or I'm going to ride like it. You could do it, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. And it's a ten
Yeah.
thousand dollar motorcycle.
And that's the thing. And I guess this is coming from my own experience of literally living off motorcycles for the last year, a little over a year. But when you're riding on a global scale, something like a Transalp is so ideal because, there you're going to hit a lot of gnarly, rough road. Obviously, that happens when you're in places like Asia, Africa, even parts of Eastern Europe, etc. However, for the most part, the big thing you're looking at if you're doing this type of touring, even if it's ADV touring, is something that's comfortable for long term. And this bike is so meant for that. And it's just, I think if you're going to do a touring bike that's under 1,000 cc's, it's just so ideal. It really, really is. Like, and once you get above that, it's like you're looking at the GS fleet, and that's a whole other realm of expense and maintenance and everything else.
Yeah, but
And a lot of
also,
Starbucks.
oh, right, yeah, that's mandatory. It won't run
It
if you
is.
haven't had a Starbucks that day.
Yeah.
It has a timer on the dash, as I discovered on my test ride. It tells you how long it's been since your last coffee. To your point about international touring, though, the other things you want is reliability, because parts availability is nil in some places, and it needs to
Yeah.
not be so high performance that it won't run on crappy gas, because God knows what you're going to find out there,
Yeah.
right? This does both of those things. Like,
Yeah.
it's a little Africa Twin, honestly.
Right.
Africa Twin is known for those things.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, when I was in Asia, I was on 3 different bikes. And when I was in Vietnam, I was on a CRF. I was on Honda. When I was in Bali, I was on a Versys. I think I was on a 250 or 300. I can't remember now. One that they had a special CC for just for there. And then I was on Pan America in Thailand. I was the most comfortable on the Honda because you could, if you had any kind of issue, anyone could fix it anywhere. Like you said, like reliability and knowing that there's parts there. Like being on Pan America in Thailand was a little scary, especially as we wandered north and got very rural and away from civilization. Because if we had a bike issue, which we did have a couple of bike issues, we were trying to get in touch with the dealership, and they would only have contact with certain people in certain areas. And so if we had any big things happen, we were completely shit out of luck. And I don't think that's a great thing when you're trying to tour around the world or just travel on a motorcycle at that capacity. Like, you need something that's going to be easy to fix, and you need something that you can count on to run no matter the circumstances. And, you have to take all those factors into consideration.
This podcast is not sponsored by Honda, by the way. But
No,
but
it's not.
it is run by two huge Honda fanboy girl
It's true.
people.
I do love other motorcycles, by the way. I've owned quite a few in my life, so we'll
Yeah,
we'll trudge down that path. We're just all Honda for episode
yeah.
1. Sorry,
Not
everybody.
every bike in my garage is a Honda. I
That's
have
true.
one
I do have a
Honda.
Cove in my garage, but it belongs
Oh
to
yeah,
the lovely Ryan of Giant Loop. So
yeah. Well, and I have a Yamaha, but I do have 4 Hondas otherwise.
yeah,
But
yeah,
that's for content, and
yeah.
also
It's true.
I'm just drawn to what I'm drawn to. You love what you love.
Yeah, I can't help it. I apparently love Hondas, so here we are.
And we hope
Yeah.
you all love this podcast and will consider, what do you do on a podcast? Do you subscribe? You follow it? Does that work?
Yeah, subscribe to our podcast. We will be releasing episodes every week.
We will.
We will,
We might
Ben.
want to bank a few then before we
We're going to, I promise.
do a month
Uh,
at minimum.
so yeah, I think we're looking at 2 a month would be ideal. If we could get one out every week, it'd probably be easier to do that during the winter versus the
Yeah,
summer,
right.
because we're going to be a little less busy, but we'll see how everything pans out.
I'll have to film
Uh,
on location in the
yeah,
summer.
I know. But maybe I can come with you on some trips and we'll just be able to do the podcast there
Yeah,
with
you're
some
coming.
nice birds chirping in the background.
You're coming on the NorCal BDR, right?
I mean, I guess so. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Well, I'm glad
I
we
have a
could.
bike to beat up in the garage. It's brand new. So yeah, let's
Yeah,
do it.
yeah. Get a skid plate on there. You're good to go.
I know. Also, thank you, Outback Motor Tech, for my skid plate. I can't wait to put it on this bike. Much
Thanks, Motor
appreciated.
Machines, for all the Hepco and Becker stuff you sent me.
Yeah,
That
sweet.
is the man.
But yeah, everybody, please subscribe. We'll be releasing episodes, usually 2 a month, maybe more. And we're going to be talking about motorcycle things
Camping
and joking
things.
around with each other.
Yeah.
And
And let us
yeah,
know if there's anything you are interested in hearing us talk about. And if there's something we have less personal experience with than the Transalp, we, might even do like research ahead of time. Not me,
yeah,
but I was told all I have to do is show up and be funny, which I think I failed at today. I was pretty serious, so I'll try harder
yeah,
next time.
yeah. This was actually pretty much a straight shoot the shit podcast. And I guess, listener, just to give you some context here, the reason Ben and I decided to do this is because we do have conversations usually once a week that are about motorcycle stuff where we shoot the shit. And we just decided it might be worth recording them and seeing if they go anywhere. So here we go.
Yeah, maybe it's garbage. I don't know.
I don't know. You are usually funnier. Maybe we should amp that up next time.
I'm not drinking this time. We tried to film this 2 weeks ago, and
That's
Grace
true.
was here with her dogs in my house, and all the dogs would not stop being maniacs. And
Yeah.
after about the
Yeah.
12th interruption, we were like, okay, never mind.
No go. No go.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think next time maybe we pick a bourbon or a
Oh,
beer of
that's a
choice
great gift. Why are we
and
not doing
spice
that?
things
We
up.
both buy
Yeah.
a bottle and just sip away.
Get after it. Yeah.
I'm into
Yeah.
it.
I'm
Maybe I'll
down.
crack my Blantons open.
Yeah.
Finally.
Ooh, Blanton's.
You'd have to
So
come here
good.
for that because I'm not going to send you one.
All right. I guess I'm just gonna have to come hang out with you and Tara. Twist my arm.
Damn it.
So terrible. Yes, listener, if you have anything you would like for us to talk about or discuss, you can leave a comment in the comments section that should be below in this podcast. We will be on the Spotify, the Apple, and probably a handful of other things, but this is round one. We'll see how this pans out.
Yeah, follow. We'd love to have you become one of the internet writing buddies with us. And
Yes, follow Ben. He is a dork in the road on YouTube and on Instagram.
yeah,
And
and
I'm
the graceful renegade over here.
Yeah.
All over the place. But for now, and as always, we just want to say thank you very much for listening.
Yes.
And please do not forget to be excellent to each other.
Yes. And from the Graceful Renegade, live wild, ride free. There's both of our slogans.
Nailed
Woohoo!
Double T time. All right.